Buenos días y bienvenidos a TLC Live, como cada miércoles a las 11 de la mañana. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Orlando Sánchez.
And I'll translate.
I think buenos días, even our guest knows what is buenos días.
Yes. Buenos dias, that's right. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us. And we have two special guests today. One of them is standing by in Round Rock, Texas. We'll introduce him in a few minutes. But first of all, we want to talk about our local school district here in Houston. As you know, I think it's the second or third largest school district in the United States. And I believe
and you have a lot of experience with
I have a little experience trying to deal with public school issues. Actually, Mark probably should have run that video, but that's okay. It is a huge budget. As you know, every year you get an appraisal from the Harris County Appraisal District, which sets the value of your home, and then that's shoved over to the various taxing entities like Harris County, the City of Houston, the Port of Houston, the Hospital District. But you'll notice that your largest portion of taxes go to the school district. Mm-hmm. And it's a sizable tax, and it's a huge budget. I think it's well over, last time I looked, it was almost $1.5 billion. Approaching two, and then they issue a lot of bonds, which means they borrow money from Wall Street, essentially, and they're called general obligation bonds, which means that your property is the collateral for that loan, different than revenue bonds. So it's a serious operation, and one that doesn't get a lot of attention. But we're pleased to have Bridget Wade today, who is a candidate for District 7 for the Houston Independent School District Board election, which is in November. And, you know, you would think that people would pay more attention to school board races given the size of the budget and the amount of taxes that they collect and administer. And as we all know, Houston Independent School District has not had a good reputation in terms of managing the public's money. There's been several investigations. There's been some criminal indictments. There's been all kinds of allegations. And there are a number of schools that are still on the failing list for many, many years, which not only fails the taxpayer, but it fails the parents, and worse, it fails the students. And in about 18 years, it fails the state of Texas, because that's our workforce. So there are serious issues facing us at our school district. And so, Andrea.
So, welcome, Bridget.
Thank
Bienvenida.
You.
Bienvenida.
Welcome. Thank you. Thank you
Gracias.
for the welcome. I appreciate it. Thank you.
So, tell us a little bit about you and why you decide to run for this position.
So, I was raised in Houston, generation Houstonian, raised in the area of my public education. I attended Briar Grove Elementary, then on to Paul Revere Middle School. We were bused out to Paul Revere as they closed our neighborhood middle school. And we were bused out to Paul Revere, and then those out in Paul Revere were bused out back into Lee High School, which is now currently Wisdom High School. And during this process of my formative years in education, I was very much an advocate for public school, but know that I needed more than I was getting at the time. So I transferred then to a brand new school that was opening, and so we started a school, and I feel like I got to see how a new school start and how we could have informed that decision as students. And I thought that was a really important part of the process. So forward thinking, we had children and moved back into the neighborhood, into Briar Grove to attend Briar Grove Elementary, and raising our 3 children, and wanted to ride our kids to ride their bikes to school. We wanted neighborhood friends, and we wanted a neighborhood that was invested in the schools. So with that, we went to Briar Grove, and then I got very involved, and I became the PTO president during those years. We built a brand new school. We rebuilt the roads around the school. We redirected a brand new carpool system to work for a better and enlarging population. We raised money with the community for a new fence project and with different people in the community. So I felt like we did a lot of different things to engage the public in the experience and encourage the neighborhood's beautification of the school.
But definitely your experience, not only as a student in the public education, but also a mother of three and raising kids and going to the public education,
That's right.
and you were involved in this in this school and doing so many things, but it's just only one community. So I bet you that you were thinking like, okay, when this is how much we are being accomplished in only one community, but this is not enough because Houston is big, HISD is huge, and I want to do more.
Exactly. So we have 200,000 students in HISD, 9 districts. It's not only is it large in population, but it's large in just land mass. And so we are a city that is beautiful because we are such a varied population. We are the most diverse city in the nation. And we serve so many great communities, and everyone needs to have their place in that participation. So it's important that we, as trustees, represent the people that we are serving, the public trust. And so I feel strongly that we can meet the needs of a lot of differing ideas, all in the same format as bringing the community in. Let's bring the community back in, the families back in, and encourage people to do that. Encourage people to have agency in their institutions.
You know, I want to talk a little bit about the importance of public education. I'm a firm believer in public education. I started off in the public schools. I went to Harin Elementary School as a young immigrant kid who didn't speak the language, and there was no ESL or anything else. So for me, it was sink or swim, right? It was the immersion process, which has worked well for me because most people wouldn't think that I'm bilingual or that I immigrated here and that English was my second language. But to tell you a little personal story about the importance of public education, I'll never forget my first grade teacher at Harin Elementary. Her name was Mrs. Turner. And Mrs. Turner taught values, which is something I think is lacking in public education because it's become, like so much of society, Bridget, so politicized that, you know, no one can make a decision on what are the values to be taught to children, right? So Mrs. Turner didn't identify us as students. She called us citizens. And she had a bulletin board, and it was an index card. And everybody's name was on it. It was Andrea, Bridget, Orlando, Amy, Johnny, so forth and so on. And we started the day off being good citizens. But when we misbehaved, Mrs. Turner would say, "You're a bad citizen. Get up and take the index card and turn it around." So our flag, we had a flag on the index card. It would no longer face the class. But let me tell you, as an immigrant, that was the first lesson I learned, was how to be a good citizen. And it's always stuck with me. I mean, I'm 64 years old and I still remember Mrs. Turner. So is the rhetoric too hot? Is it too political at least within the members of the board of HISD?
Absolutely. I look at a good team, a good board, or a good group of trustees, kind of like a complete meal. And so they all have their place on the plate, and they all work together to enhance each other. And so they all have different purposes. And I think there is right now a power-hungry group that each individual is trying to seek their own authority, and they're not working together for the betterment of our city and our students. So I think that's the biggest problem, is that everyone's trying to be the big man on the plate. And I think that's huge. It's a pride problem, and something that we need to bring the temperature down and bring people who are willing to work together and make for a really strong plate.
I think that the board members forgot the main focus of the HISD, which is the family, the mission and the vision, which is the families and the kids.
That's right.
And they are more competing to each other, like who's doing more or who make more noise, than really care about our kids, our education. And it's been a lot of changes. And you guys were educated in this country. I wasn't. So you guys can compare back in your time and then your kids' time, which is they are adults, but they are like they're millennials, and now these days with like my kids, my kids are 16 years old. They're not attending public education because by choice, thank God I was able to send them to private because I was raised in a private school in my country. In my country, it's not like here. In my country, public education is not like here. So you guys can compare, and at certain point, you ever thought that you were gonna try to race for or be a candidate for the board member and the HISD?
Yes, I thought about it when our kids were in public school. I reached out to people that I love, especially my parents, and I asked them about it. I said, I'd like to run and for HISD trustee, and they said, wow, that's a big project. And I said,
with a
well,
big paycheck.
and with no paycheck. And I said, okay. So I sat back. I'm trying to learn to sit back, listen to what I'm being spoken to in my journey, and this keeps coming back to me. And during this last year and a half, I've just been thinking about it. And I told my husband, who supports me firmly, and my family, that this is what I needed to do to serve the city I love and I care for so much, and I am deeply indebted to for who I am today. And so I feel like we can do more. I'm a creative thinker. I like to think outside the box. I think there's so many things we can do to create policy that works for the most people. We miss the average child in our conversation, and I'm not saying they're average. I'm saying that a lot of people just are average learners. They're regular learners, and I think we miss that large population of kids when we're trying to meet the needs of the ends. And so I think we really need to focus in and harness a little bit of capital into the largest population of kids who.
Andrea brought up an interesting point, which is what first of all, you're not only going to be serving your city, but let me tell you, you're serving society in America, because there's no more important job than the education of the next generation, and to do it without pay is a labor of love. So my hat's off to anyone that runs for school board. But Andrea brought up an interesting point, which makes America unique. We're one of the few places in the world, well, not few, but there are a lot of places in the world where education is a commodity. You have to buy it. You have to pay for it. And unfortunately, in a lot of developing countries, you have to pay for it. And what makes America what America is, its ability to meld all the different types of people, all of, whether you're an immigrant or a native born, and that's what makes America the jewel that it is in the world. It gives everybody an equal opportunity from day one. I mean, it hasn't always been that way. I mean, you and I can go back to Brown versus Board of Education, which were horrific times in our country. But the great thing about America is we're always trying to correct those errors, right? So every child has pretty much a equal opportunity to obtain an education. And when you see a dysfunctional school board, like the Houston Independent School District, running through billions of dollars of taxpayer money on top of the debt that it owes, and not providing those kids a quality education, I worry about the future not only of our country but certainly our state and our city. And it's unfair to those children. It's unfair to the taxpayer, and it's a big concern for me. And I don't know if Mark can pull up the segment that you remember the former chancellor of the University of Texas, Mark, that we ran the piece on. If you can find it, it's no big deal if you can't. But there was, you remember the program called Firing Line?
Yes.
You know, Margaret Hoover is now the host of it on PBS. And she had the former Navy SEAL who was the admiral that oversaw all of the Middle East operations. And Margaret asked him a question, and his response was stunning to me. And hopefully, I'm not going to tip it off, but you can't find it, Mark?
I'm looking.
No, that's okay. But anyway, what are we going to do? What are the plans to make sure that the quality of education is a good quality education for every child in Houston?
Well, on my opinion is we've lost pride in our institution. And that comes in multiple fashions. It's not only the trustees who've served. We've lost pride in our teachers, in good quality teachers. They are harder and harder to find. I think there's lots of reasons for that. We could start with one being our union or their union who serves them, but not always well. And it surely does not serve our students the way it should. So that's another animal. But I think we can also see that it would be nice to see civics back in our classrooms, good civics that we can understand how our own city let's start with our own city governments. Most people don't even know how our own city governments work. That's a tragedy. And so we're not having informed voting, well-vetted candidates. Mm-hmm. And I think that is perpetuating the never-ending problem. We also have a lack of community service within your school. So when I was in elementary school, and probably Orlando, you the same, we did service jobs, and we contributed to our community within our school. So it was kind of a little mini civics class. We engaged in different projects. We helped shelve books in the library, or we changed the marquee, or we worked the security guard, crosswalks and things
or
of that.
raised the flag.
Or raised the flags in the morning. And we did different service projects that actually brought you together as teams, working together alongside other kids in your class. Kids look about 2 years ahead of them, in my opinion. And we're not seeing the picture from the kids' point of view. We've lost that mission, which is let's look at where kids see about 2 years ahead.
Yeah.
And the feeder pattern is another problem, I think. We want school choice. We believe in school choice. School choice is important, and we should be able to have that freedom. But our feeder pattern is important, too, because people want to go to school in their communities. They want to go to school with their neighbors, their friends. They want to live close to their schools so they can contribute. And so when we don't have the feeder pattern, you can use the budgets, or when we do have a good feeder pattern, those budgets can be used wisely. If you have a music program in your elementary school, that same music program can follow those kids to a middle school. Those teachers know those kids from elementary, and then it goes on and on. And so it's a good way to use their taxpayer dollars.
Bridget, I want to, I'm Latina, and I was reading an article yesterday that it said that almost 2/3 of the nearly 200,000 students in the school district in HISD, they are Latinos. And that community is very underserved. So tell me about in your district or the district that you're running for. Of course, there's a lot of Latinos. I mean, Houston is plenty of Latinos, and we are the fastest growing community. So in your platform as a candidate, what is the Latino community there?
So in the Latino community, because it is the largest in the district, it's important that we represent all communities, but really important that we focus in on what that group of people really wants to see for their kids. And we know for a fact that especially the Latino community wants and is looking for the best for their kids. They are family oriented. They believe so much in the kids, and they also know that we can look forward one generation and see all the things that can happen in one generation. If you're an immigrant, you see that in one generation you can see how much has been accomplished, and we keep looking back 2 and 3 generations behind us. Let's start looking forward, and I think that's where we need to keep the eye on the ball. Is let's look at what has happened, what the community would like to see in their schools, and also give them agency to choose what they want for their kids. If we have good school choice, if we have good school options, and we have strong feeder pattern schools, then people would like to stay in their communities. They like to be active in their communities, and I especially think the Latinos of all people like that the most.
One of the issues I think, and that affects the Hispanic immigrant Latino community, because we're talking about that ethnic group. I mean, we realize that we have multiple nationalities and multiple ethnicities, but if we're talking about the largest ethnic group within the Houston Independent School District, and given that Houston is such an immigrant city, that Hispanic parents are confused about vouchers, public schools, choice, all those things. Those are great buzzwords for us in the business, but for those folks, they don't get it. And so I think the school district, for whatever reason, is not doing an effective job. And then layer on top of that, charter schools, which even blows the mind of the parents, is how do we keep up with all this? And so I think the school board and the members of those representing those districts probably ought to do a better job of presenting the different options within the school district to the parents, right?
I completely agree. In fact, I've been talking to a couple different people who've been involved in nonprofits that help people figure out the system. And the sad thing is they have to do that. It should be something that should be very apparent, very transparent. And there shouldn't be the runaround within the district. They want to keep the kids captive into this standard situation. And instead of saying, these are your options, take advantage, but we're going to make ours better, it's a competition thing. But we need to offer the whole opportunity for everybody. And they need to be able to know clearly what that means. And also that they are, we have STEM programs. We have each magnet school is specific to a certain thing. Well, that's not always the best answer for every child. And so those are they talk about those being the premier schools, but those don't deal with the regular public schools.
I think it's a big disconnection, and I think the board members are not really paying attention of what is the needs in these underserved communities. They don't understand what they need. They don't understand the culture. They don't understand their traditions, and they don't understand the needs. And I was reading in the article in the Houston Chronicle that a group of Latino moms, they were meeting with the superintendent and also with 2 board members. And one of the board members said, like, it's good that finally we're learning about you, about your community. And it was like, and this person is being like years there. So it's like, so is there like now learning about the community? So what is being going on for years? Why they haven't been really learning about the community? Because I think that's the biggest gap and disconnection between the board members, and they're not paying attention to what is the real needs on the families.
I couldn't agree more. And there's always been that argument of should we change up the system a little bit? And I'm in favor of that. The HISD being so large, and how do we meet the needs of communities that are got their hand up. They're ready to engage. They've been ready, and nobody's been listening. So I think it's time for us to get within the communities, and that's what I think has also been a problem, is that we haven't reached out into communities, to the leaders of those communities, and we haven't engaged them in the process. They have creative ideas. There are so many smart people out there that have better ideas than I do. Mm-hmm. And we need to learn from them and learn from what they have in their experience, and their communities, to know best how to use that knowledge, engage them in the process, and then try some new things. Let's shake it up a little bit.
Listen, and you were talking about earlier about that you said the word, I want to listen. I want to sit and listen. What do they want? What do they need? Mm-hmm. Because we think that we know, but we don't really know. Mm-mm. Because we are not in their shoes. So I think that's very important that you were specific talking about that. I want to sit and learn from them and listen to them. Mm-hmm. What is their needs? That's the only way.
You know, I'm a big capitalist, and I like to see corporate America. And I just wish that public education would deliver a consistent product across the board, regardless of the neighborhood that you live in. Just because you hail from the 5th Ward or the 2nd Ward doesn't mean that you should be subjected to a poor education, poor quality education. And you know, I always use the McDonald's example. Wherever you go, whether it's Bogota, Colombia, or Beijing, China, or New York City, a Big Mac's a Big Mac. You know, I mean, they make them the same way. You get the whether you like McDonald's or not, at least the quality is consistent, and that's what corporate America strives for, is consistency of quality. Mm-hmm. Whether it's Coca-Cola, whether it's McDonald's, whether it's even a big restaurateur like Tillman Fertitta. It's about consistency. It's about going to a Papacitos and knowing you're going to get the same thing, same quality every time. I don't know where the wheels fell off of public education. And one of the things I tell my friends in the Texas legislature, and this is an opinion, but I'm afraid that the legislature is, maybe because of frustration, but starting to disengage a little bit, kind of walk away from urban public education. Because rural education, I'm a taxpayer in Brackettville, Texas. Actually, I pay taxes in 4 or 5 different counties in the United States. But in Kinney County, Texas, the Brackett Independent School District, and we've had that superintendent here, everyone, and it's majority Hispanic and poor, it's one of the poorest counties in Texas, loves their school. Mm-hmm. It's a complete 180-degree difference from the Houston Independent School District. And so I'm concerned that the legislature isn't doubling down to see what they can do in urban public education, because I think that's the next crisis for the state of Texas.
I bet this is one of my things that I speak to a lot, and that is back to the whole idea that we have this hugely, wonderfully diverse city. We have this just grand population. We are an unzoned city designed that way, and that's been to our benefit. And yet our school system seems to work in a zoned capacity. And that goes against the grain of the nature of our city. So ultimately, I mean, yes, it would be great if we could break up the HISD, use the resources out of the district that are common core, accounting, legal, and have different districts that represent. I could see you, my trustee, in my grocery store, and I could say to you, I know I need that. We need this. I mean, ideally, that's big picture. That's ideal. But why aren't we going there? If they're so concerned about public education, then we need to be thinking differently. We need to rethink the system. There are really no large districts in the nation that are doing well. Most every strong district is about 20 schools, which is that's telling. So yes, that's a big picture idea, and it's beyond the moment that we need to be in today. But I do think it is something to think about.
not only something to think about, Bridget, I'm going to say it's something to immediately take action on, because if you look at urban areas of the United States, but let's just focus on Texas, you were talking about the lack of civility and civics. It's sad what we're seeing in Texas. And, as a conservative, I want to make sure that Texas stays strong, not only economically, but as a leader in the nation, as it always has been. And I'm just afraid that if we're losing urban public education, and nothing is bigger than Houston Independent School District in terms of urban public education, it is disastrous for our state. It's disastrous for our country, and it is, to me, of paramount importance. Now, we couldn't find the video, but I'm going to tell you that the former chancellor and Navy SEAL of the University of Texas was interviewed by Margaret Hoover on Firing Line, and she asked the admiral, what is the biggest national security threat facing America? And without skipping a beat, he said K through 12 education. Yeah. The biggest national security threat facing America, and this was about a month and a half ago. So that's how critical it is. But listen, we want to thank you for coming in, and we want to thank you for serving Houston, and more importantly, for serving the future, the kids of Houston and the taxpayers. Election is November.
Yeah,
so I wanted you talk to the camera,
yes.
which is the viewers.
Okay.
And I wanted you to tell them where they can find you, why to vote for you, and when is elections.
I'm Bridget Wade. I'm running for District 7, which is the Galleria area. That just in a nutshell of where I am. I'm running because I believe that our kids are our first priority. Everything else goes to the side. I believe that we have an obligation to meet our taxpayers where they need to be and listen to our constituents first and foremost. And I also just believe in the city of Houston and know we can do it. We can get out of this situation that we're in. And I appreciate this time I've had with you all. I want you to let you know that the election is on November 2nd. I am second on the ballot. It takes two to tango, you the voter and I as the candidate. And early voting starts October 18th. And
just around the corner, and the website?
Here it comes.
What's your website?
And the website is www.bridgetforthekids.com.
Four is spelled out, or is the number 4?
It's the word 4 spelled out.
Okay.
FOR.
Okay. Well,
Great.
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Good
much.
luck.
Thank you.
And if you need anything or get a message out, please let us know, and we'll get you back.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Orlando.
All right. So we're going to move over to a different part of the state of Texas now. We have a friend of ours that is running to be state representative, and his name is Nelson Harin. Is how you pronounce it in Spanish, but he calls himself, because obviously being a Houstonian and a Texan, many people called him Jarrin, right? So Nelson is with us. He is an attorney, native Houstonian. And Nelson, if you're there, let's do a mic check.
Hey, Nelson Jarrin here. How's everybody doing?
Good,
Nelson Harin. I call
I
him
know.
Nelson Harin.
That's right. You
So-
call him whatever you want to call him.
He was born in Houston, but
Yeah.
his family is from my neighbors, Ecuador.
Yep.
That's
He
right.
is, I was telling Nelson I had the opportunity to go to Ecuador, and sort of. First of all, let me say that it is a beautiful country, and
beautiful people. They are so nice
Yeah.
people. Very nice, calm, and very
Right.
well educated.
unlike their neighbors in Colombia. No, I'm just kidding. Porque ahora los colombianos se van a
Pilas
poner.
con los colombianos, pilas.
But anyway, Nelson, thanks for joining us. You're up in Round Rock, Texas. You are an attorney. You're a native Houstonian. Where was school for you? Where did you do high school, and where did you go to the university?
Yeah, I was actually born in Beaumont, but my parents got me over to Houston just right as Hurricane Alicia came in the early 1980s. So I was born and raised in the north side of Houston, the Spring area. Moved around a little bit growing up, but I graduated from Klein High School in '99. I then went to Texas A&M. That was where my undergraduate degree was from in economics. Took some time off to work after college, and then ultimately went to Notre Dame Law School because of being Hispanic heritage, Latino, strong Catholic family. Thought that Notre Dame Law School was a good place to get a Catholic legal education. So went there and graduated from law school in 2010.
Yeah. Well, good.
So Nelson, now you're a candidate for House District 52 in Southwestern Williamson County. Can you tell us what is the area, for those that doesn't know?
Sure. Yeah. So Williamson County is kind of like Montgomery County is to Harris County. So it's the north suburbs outside of Austin. About 25 miles from downtown Austin. The main cities here are Round Rock. That's our most populous city. That's where I live. But we also have Hutto and Taylor. So it's the southeastern part of Williamson County, and it's growing like crazy, exponentially. Of course, the district lines will be redrawn during redistricting. Our county had 425,000 back in 2010, and we're at over 610,000 today, or actually more than that. That was the most recent census numbers. So we should be gaining an extra seat up here. So to be determined on where the lines specifically are drawn at, but we'll go from roughly 2.5 districts to 3 districts wholly in our county here now going forward.
Nelson, do you have legislative experience? Have you sought public office before? Or is this your first bid?
First foray into public office. I turned 40 in July, so I think it's a midlife crisis or sign of something else that I've gotten into this. So no previous, but lots of previous experience in and around the Texas Capitol. I worked on my first election campaign in 2006. That was for then candidate Patricia Harless, who was from the Spring Klein area. She became elected representative for a number of years. And now actually her husband, Sam, serves in the Texas House. So I worked on her first election campaign before law school. And after law school, I'd had an opportunity to work for a couple of big law firms in Houston, but I just didn't feel like that was, that was appropriate for me. I wanted to do something more and give back. So I came back, and my first job as an attorney was at the Texas Legislative Council, where I was a drafting attorney for all 181 members of the Texas legislature, drafting their bills and amendments. And then after a couple of years of that, in January 2013, I came over to Senator Schwartner's office when he was sworn in as a new senator. And I was with him for 3 years as his legislative director and general counsel. And then after that, I joined the Meadows Mental Health Policy Institute, was a nonprofit, nonpartisan policy institute based out of Dallas that focuses on improving the delivery of mental health services in Texas. And now I'm a counsel for Castle Communications, which is a national communications firm. So I've been in and around the Capitol for about 11 years, intimately involved with the legislative process and knowing how to draft and read legislation, and then from Senator Schwartner's office, knowing how policy and politics implement the things that happen down there. So I think I've got a well-rounded background and I'm fit for the position.
And for those watching, some people may say, well, it's a little early to start talking about the legislative races. I mean, we just finished our special session. We finally were able to wrangle the Democrats out of, their vacation in Washington, D.C., rubbing elbows with Nancy Pelosi and AOC. But anyway, they came back to Texas, and Texas finally got its business done, as I predicted would happen. But so the primary filing deadline is not too far away. I mean, it'll probably be extended, as I understand, a little bit. But candidates are already starting to line up for seeking the nomination process. And of course, the campaigns start even earlier than that because, I think I've always said if you wait till the filing deadline, you're a little late in terms of campaigning. So candidates will designate a treasurer and will start, putting their name out in the community and start attending functions. And then, of course, the general election is in November of 2022. But this is the season in which campaigns, at least from the grassroots perspective, start to get fired up. And so Nelson was kind enough to reach out to TLC, organization, Texas Latino Conservatives, where I had a good conversation with him and thought he was a magnificent person that we ought to have on the program and introducing to not only the state of Texas, but certainly to the constituents in Williamson County. So Nelson, tell me, because every district in Texas is different and they have special parochial needs, but in your mind, let's talk about the global issues that you want to tackle in the legislature, which are, that affect all Texans. And then let's make it a little more parochial and talk about the issues facing Williamson County in your district. that you want to talk about. So what are the 2 or 3 big issues that you see facing Texas, and then what are the couple of issues that are specific to your community?
Yeah, I think the issues facing the state as a whole are the same ones facing our community here. Ultimately, you talked about this election process getting started earlier, and our representative here is one of the people that fled to D.C., and that got me energized to get in this race early. I mean, he abandoned the district, and I think he's abandoned the values of this district a long time ago. Williamson County is a place where, as I mentioned, my wife and I, we moved up here after we found out we were pregnant with our first child, and we were looking for that suburban, safe community that has plenty of parks, and it's a good place to start a business, but ultimately it has good schools. It's a safe place to live, work, and raise your family. And so our current representative has been voting against those ideals and voting more like an Austin City Council member for his 2 terms in office. People live in Williamson County because it's not Austin. We're not looking to have problems with homeless encampments. We're not looking to defund our police department. So I think those are the kitchen table issues that resonate in the district and resonate as a whole. We want to continue. I believe Texas has been awarded either 8 or 9 years in a row the Governor's Cup for the #1 place to have a business. Williamson County, where I'm at, we have a number of businesses that are relocated here. There's a hearing tonight for Taylor, which is a small community in Williamson County that's trying to have a new Samsung plant located there, which would be transformative as far as the tax base. So continuing to recruit businesses to Texas, I think one thing that's key to that, as we saw in the February winter storm, is we need to make sure our infrastructure is sustainable. We need to make sure that we have reserve capacity for our electric system. Large businesses aren't going to want to continue to move to relocate to Texas and move a bunch of employees if they don't think that we have a sustainable electric grid. But there was a big legislation passed this past session to begin that process. And I think moving forward, we need to look at additional capacity and generation power. Water is another big issue here, of course, with our community growing. It's one of the fastest growing counties in the country. Just like Texas, 1,000 to 1,200 people moving here a day. We have to look long term at the infrastructure needs of Texas. Then beyond that, supporting our law enforcement here locally is very critical. I think about the men and women that leave their husbands, wives, and families at home every night to go out and serve and protect our community. We shouldn't be vilifying them. There are some bad apples out there, but we know that by and large that our law enforcement are out there doing their best, and we need to support them. And then finally, education is huge. I have an 8-year-old daughter that's in 2nd grade. And so really I think nothing is more important than making sure that we have a bright future for our young kids. I'm where I am today because of my education. And I think this past year we got off track with COVID. My daughter was stuck on a laptop computer at her school trying to do 1st grade. So that's not a very good process for trying to practice your print, your letters, practice your handwriting, or doing math even. So I'm looking to see that education gets back on track and that we address the COVID-related learning loss that I think was evident from this past year. And then we make sure that the COVID pandemic doesn't define a whole generation. So we have to learn how to live with it at this point. And I think get on and about our business and education, especially to our younger kids that are in kindergarten through 5th grade. I think that's a formative part of their education and very critical moving forward.
Yeah, I don't know how much before you came on, we had one of the school board candidates here at the Houston Independent School District, Bridget Wade, and we were talking about the importance of education for everyone in Texas, every child in Texas. So I'm glad that you, as the son of an immigrant, obviously, are a beneficiary of our education system, and as I am as well, because I'm an immigrant from Cuba, didn't speak the language when I started school, and we had a good public education system. But I'm glad that you're making education a top priority in your bid for the Texas legislature, because it's critically important for the future of Texas.
Nelson, at what moment you're a lawyer and you've been involved in politics somehow, but what made you decide to run for this position?
I think it was something in the back of my head. I mentioned when I went to law school, I had the opportunity. I worked for 2 big law firms in Houston, and I did that during my summers. And I was in a high rise in downtown Houston writing legal briefs and doing research. And at the end of the day, I didn't feel like I was making a difference. And so I feel really that I'm called to serve and give back to my community. I think I was emboldened because of the votes of our current representative that I felt were out of line with our district and the values. He has a nice, policies that he's people over politics, and he tries to present a bipartisan persona. But his record really shows otherwise. And as I mentioned, we moved out of Austin to Williamson County to have a safe place to live, work, and raise a family. And I'm not looking to uproot my family and move again. I'm looking to protect the values that make this place great. And so ultimately, that's why I was called to serve. I would say that the exodus to DC was icing on the cake, or the thing that pushed me further over the edge. It was something that I've been considering with the votes this legislative session, and in early June and July, I started to get more active. But you can't run from a fight. If you disagree with somebody, you stand up and you do your darndest to advocate for your district, and you stay there. You don't fly away to DC. I know the Democrats have used this as a fundraising tool, and they've made the pitch that they got the Voting Rights Act closer to passage. Anybody and everybody that's paying attention knows that the Senate filibuster is the thing that's keeping that from going anywhere. Nancy Pelosi in the House could have passed that at any time, but just like many other bills, the filibuster brings it over, and there's not consensus in the Senate, so that bill's likely to die there. So really, it was a fundraising opportunity and a way to build up social media ID and everything else. And that's not somebody that's serving their district. That's somebody that wants to be a career politician and sees this as a launching pad to higher office. I want to do my time on behalf of my community and pass my torch to the next person that's willing to give back. So,
Well, listen, I mean, you're the whole reason this political action committee exists, is to find immigrants, Latinos, children of immigrants, because the perception is across the state of Texas that Latinos vote, pretty much with the Democrats, and that's just absolutely not true. What we haven't done an effective job of doing as conservatives in Texas is engaging the Latino community more. But you're certainly a testament to what immigrants and children of immigrants can do in this country if they're given the opportunity to have a good education, and parents that push them. And the only thing that's disappointing for me, Nelson, is that you moved out of Houston and Harris County and went up to Williamson. But we'd love to have you here. But no, it sounds like you're well established in Williamson County, and I think you're going to do great things. We're certainly going to be keeping an eye on you. We're going to be involved in your campaign, and we have several rising stars like you across the state of Texas. Remember Luisa del Rosal, who ran for state representative up in the north of Dallas. Luisa fortunately did not go away. She didn't do, but she's awesome. And you are awesome, and we have millions of awesome Latinos. Mayra Flores, but she's running for Congress. I was talking about state reps, but now we have great candidates. It's just great to see you, because quite frankly, and just like Bridget Wade that we had on the program, Bridget's running for school board, and you know what the compensation is, $0. But we also
not much better at the legislature.
I was just going to say, we know you state legislators are real rich with your $600 salary per month, right?
That's right.
So it is a dedication to public service that we're grateful for people like you that want to serve your community and the great state of Texas. So, let us know what we can do. Use this venue as a platform to get your message out whenever you have an issue that you want to push and you want to talk about. We're certainly here to help you.
I appreciate
Como en
that.
español se dice amor a la patria. Eso, ellos lo hacen por puro amor a la patria.
Sí, porque no es el salario, porque él es licenciado, abogado, lo que sea, pudiera ganar millones de dólares, ¿no?
Claro.
Pero
amor a la patria.
Está dedicado a ayudar a los contribuyentes del estado de Texas, así que lo felicitamos por eso. But anything else you want to share with us before we let you go back to campaign?
Yeah, I just appreciate you guys having me on today and sharing that message. I think the evidence of President Trump doing well across our border, our southern border, and turning a lot of the votes there. As you said, it is about getting our message out. But I think the message of a conservative Latino running for office, son of an immigrant that came here, my grandfather not speaking hardly any Spanish, and was able to settle and establish a successful surgery practice in the Midwest and have generations of kids and descendants that flourished. I think it's about, the hard work, focusing on education and leveraging those education opportunities to get ahead, and ultimately not feeling sorry for yourself. You can't just expect things to fall in your way, and you really have to just, I don't like the term pull yourself up by the bootstraps, but I could have given up many times in my life. I've had a lot of different tragedies and setbacks and things like that, but I view them all as growing experiences, and they're what helped shape me and the person I am today. So just resonating those values, I think, with our fellow Latinos, and encouraging them, even if it's not running for office, to just be in service of your community. How can you give back and pay it forward to the next generation, ultimately, is my message. So thank you again for your time today.
Yeah, and look, that's why I was delighted to hear that one of your major issues is education, because that is the starting block for every child, and we ought to deliver a good quality education in Texas, regardless of whether you're in an urban or a rural area. Every child deserves a fighting chance, regardless of race and ethnicity and language barriers. I mean, what's amazing about this country, what's amazing about the state of Texas and the United States, is that Andrea Gomez, as an immigrant, has an opportunity to give one of the finest educations to her children who are thriving. Me, as an immigrant, I had the opportunity to receive a great public education, graduated from Bel Air High School, and then attained my degree with the help of the United States Armed Forces through the GI Bill. My daughter is now at Ohio State working on her fourth degree. So one of these days she'll graduate. And you, as the son of immigrants, also have had the tremendous opportunity to receive a great education and now serve your country in the Texas legislature. I mean, I remind people that only in America can immigrants actually run for public office and get elected, right, Andreas? I served 6 years as an immigrant Latino on the Houston City Council, 12 years as county treasurer in the third largest county in the United States. And I mean, this is, my God.
But not only that, Orlando, you can do anything you want in this country.
Sure.
Anything you want to be in this country, you can accomplish that.
Provided you come out of the starting block with a good education and good values, and that's why education is so important. And so, but we're just so pleased to have you as a candidate, and we're scrubbing the state of Texas to find more candidates like you. That's actually the mission of our political action committee, is to find good quality candidates that value Texas, that value education, understand the plight of an immigrant, understand the culture, the Latino community. I mean, we all want to be American citizens. There's no question about that. I mean, that's we're all under one flag, one nation under God, so to speak. But we've got to help the next generation, and the next generation of the young people, and they deserve a good education.
So, Nelson, just talk to the camera, to the viewers, and tell us where they can find you, when it's going to be elections, and why to vote for you.
Hey, everybody. Nelson Jarrin. I'm a Republican candidate, Latino Conservative for House District 52 in Williamson County. The first election would be the primary election in March. That could change due to redistricting. The final election in November of next year. That's not going to change. That's set in stone. My website is www.nelsonharin or nelsonjarrin, JARRIN.com. You can find out more, sign up to assist. We're also updating our issue areas on there today, and many of the things I spoke about today being pro-business, pro-growth, pro-education, of course, supporting our law enforcement. Those will all be issue areas updated on there soon. And I look forward to staying in touch with everybody and really pushing, as we've said, the mission forward for immigrants and son of immigrants, that you can rise up and be successful in this country. And we need to set the bar high, as we've mentioned, that the education and the opportunities for higher education, let's pass that down to future generations, and let's all be successful together.
Well, look, thank you so much again for joining us. We typically don't give too early of an endorsement, but sometimes, there's that rare occasion where we'll have a Nelson Jarrin or a
Nelson Harin.
Luisa del Rosal, and we'll jump in and, look for an endorsement coming your way from TLC, and hopefully we'll start a cascade of endorsements coming your way. But again, count on us for anything we can do. We're happy to to have a caliber candidate. I mean, really, I mean, you're a needle in a haystack. So we're proud of you. Keep up the good work, and we want to wish you all the best. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you
Muchas
so much.
gracias,
I appreciate it.
Nelson.
Okay.
Muchas
hasta luego.
gracias.
Hasta luego.
Hasta luego.
Okay. All right. So, Leadership Latino coming up. This is where young Latino conservatives across the state of Texas get their training
That
and
can
they
be
become
like
candidates
Nelson?
like Nelson, like Luisa, like Freddie, like Maida. All of the great work we're doing across the state of Texas. So that's coming up when, Andrea?
October 2nd.
October 2nd.
In Rio Grande Valley.
And RGV, the Rio Grande Valley.
Grande
And
Valley.
we're looking forward to seeing all our friends down in the Harlingen area and Cameron County. And we're going to have some great speakers. This is a one-day event. It's Saturday morning till Saturday afternoon. We will feed you. Not filet mignon, probably a box ham sandwich. We are conservatives. We don't like to spend a lot of money, but you will get some great training. You will get some great networking opportunities.
And for free.
You'll be able to see some of the things that we've been able to do across the state of Texas, and we'll feature some of the candidates that we've helped that are going to come back. You know, the great thing, Andrea, is that some of these candidates that we've helped and some of these candidates we've trained
Now they're
are
running for office.
not only running for office, but they're coming back and actually starting to teach the classes. So you can learn
like giving back to the community.
Giving back to the TLC and
TLC
giving
and the
back to
community.
Texas. So it's really coming full circle. We appreciate everyone's help and participation. I was just going to remind everyone that we are a donor-based operation. We're a political action committee, and we're a 501c4 nonprofit organization. That's where we do all of our educational activity. That's where we train our young candidates for future office in terms of issues and how to address the press and how to raise money, how to comply with the ethics rules of the state of Texas. So we'll give you all that training. Just attend one of our Leadership Latino seminars. The next one is October 2nd down in the Rio Grande Valley, and we look forward to seeing you there. But we also ask for those of you that are watching and can help the organization to make a donation to the Texas Latino Conservatives on our website. It's www.texaslatinoconservatives.com. And on that website, you can also sign up for Leadership Latino October 2nd down in the Rio Grande Valley. So we look forward to seeing you all there. Andrea?
O también nos pueden visitar en leadershiplatino.com.
Either way.
So either way.
Ambos,
So
los dos.
leadershiplatino.com or texaslatinoconservatives.com. You're going to find all the information in English and Spanish. You just register and participate. It's completely free, but it's a lot of things to gain.
And we're on overtime, so we need to say goodbye to everybody.
Pues muchas gracias a todos por habernos acompañado este miércoles en TLC Live. See you guys next Wednesday at 11. No, we're being on time pretty much.
Pretty much.
No, más o menos.
Pero no importa, más o menos.
Más o
because, you
menos.
know, we're Latinos, so we're never on time. So that's why we say 11 o'clock, más o menos.
Más o menos.
Have a blessed week. We'll see you next
Chao,
time.
chao, gracias.